boys. They're on the road. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, and Will Kane. Hello, everybody.
What's good? Good morning. How y'all doing?
Good. I hope you're all ready for a doubleheader because coming up tonight, we will be back here for you in prime time. We got an NBA special on the eve of the playoffs, 10 p.m. Eastern. We cannot wait. We are making our series picks, and special guests Donovan Mitchell and Scottie Pippen will join us. But, guys, we need to get into some NFL stuff. So after arranging for Colin Kaepernick to work out for the Seahawks this week, Seattle postponed the trip when the quarterback declined to say whether he would stop kneeling during the national anthem next season. Now, a league source told our Adam Schefter. Meanwhile, Seattle has signed quarterback Stephen Morris, who was cut by the Redskins. To be clear, since parting ways with the 49ers in early 2017, Cap never has said publicly if he will stand or kneel for the anthem if another NFL team signs him. Stephen A., do you have a problem with what the Seahawks did?
Well, I don't like it. I certainly wouldn't do it, but it's incredibly predictable. The fact of the matter is that the whole national anthem issue that Colin Kaepernick took by taking the knee sparked a bevy of protest. We all know what the residual impact of that has been. And as a result, he's been blacklisted. I'm not surprised at all. So it's not a matter of whether I have a problem with it or not. Of course I have a problem with it. I don't think it's fair to Colin Kaepernick. I think that, particularly when the National Football League did not have a rule, a mandate in place prohibiting you from kneeling for the national anthem, or didn't mandate that you stand. It just strongly encouraged that you stand. Since he was in violation of no rules, no bylaws whatsoever from the National Football League, I think this is wrong for them to do this. But he has clearly been blacklisted. And I think it's one of those situations where we just need to stand up and recognize that. Colin Kaepernick's not getting back in the National Football League. They're not going to let him back in, because by letting him back in, it's going to give, in the eyes of owners, it's going to give other players a license to do things that would compromise their bottom line. And that's all they care about. They care about the fact that he wasn't protesting against them, that he was protesting against social injustice, racial inequality, police brutality, et cetera, and somehow, some way he managed to make it their problem. That's how they're viewing it. Those are the kind of things that I have been told for months, and I'd be shocked if he ended up back in the league, and I think this is just the latest example of it. They were willing to let him back in if he were willing to say that he wouldn't kneel again. He has not been willing to say that, and as a result, they've taken the position that they've taken, which is incredibly predictable to me, because it's what I've been saying was going to go down for months.
This is a punk move by the NFL, the way they've handled the Kaepernick situation the whole time. It's a punk move by Paul Allen and the Seattle Seahawks, the way they've handled this situation. And I want to say something just to preface. Everyone's describing it as a protest. I've done the same. In fact, let's remember how this began. A voluntary ceremony. It's not compulsory, your participation. It is voluntary. And I believe if they tried to make it compulsory and it was challenged, that could go up the courts and be very interesting. And I'll get to that in a second. A voluntary ceremony he quietly sat out of. In other words, at first it wasn't this big publicized protest. It was a guy quietly sitting down, not participating. Let's remember what happened. Nate Boyer, friend of the show, former military, former NFL player briefly, wanted to talk to Kaepernick to make sure that Kaepernick understood the way he felt, the way the military felt, etc. And as a result of that conversation, Kaepernick decided to show respect to the military, to show I'm not protesting that. I simply don't feel good about standing for that flag right now because of, in this case, police interactions with communities of color. I'm going to kneel to show that I'm actually respecting, but I don't want to participate in this ceremony. Then that was described as a protest. Now, the reason it's a punk move, the way they've handled this by the NFL and now the Seahawks and Paul Allen, is because essentially what they're saying is it is not voluntary. It is mandatory. And here, if you're going to say that, come out on the record, say it. I dare you, Paul Allen. I dare you, Roger Goodell. I dare you, NFL owners. I'm not even claiming it's a conspiracy among owners or Roger Goodell, although it would be interesting to find out. But I am saying if each individual owner is essentially mandating participation in a supposedly voluntary ceremony, get on the record and say that's what you're doing. And the reason I doubt they will is because It is one thing to say First Amendment rights don't extend to the workplace. In other words, you can't just say whatever you want in the workplace. It is another thing to say you must parrot the boss's political speech. And standing for the anthem is political speech, whether you like it or not. And I do not believe that the boss can make Kaepernick parrot his political speech. So then it comes down to, is Kaepernick qualified to play in the league? And anyone who makes the argument that he's not one of the best 64 quarterbacks in the world will be laughed out of the conversation. This is an outrage, plain and simple.
Okay, before I jump in, can I just, for a point of clarification, the question at the bottom of our screen is, do you have a problem with this move? And Stephen A., you said very clearly that you do. And so just that I fully understand, the move that you have a problem with is what?
Well, my problem with it is that I think he's being blacklisted because of a rule basically a rule that didn't exist. The owners are looking at it from, in other words,
it's the rescinding of the tryout.
For clarification purposes, here's my issue more so than anything else. If this were the NBA, I would have no problem with it because they had a rule in place mandating that you stood for the national anthem. I think it's beyond hypocritical that the NFL never had that rule, but then would punish Colin Kaepernick because of the residual impact or the collateral damage his willingness to kneel caused when you didn't have rules in place prohibiting him from doing so. That's all.
Okay. Okay, and Max, I think I understand what you're referring to when you call it a punk move. We're talking about the Seahawks here and their offer of a tryout and the rescinding of that offer when it becomes apparent that Colin Kaepernick intends to continue his protest or doesn't promise to stop his protest to some extent. And here's the bottom line truth. Guys, honestly, I just think it's too shallow. It's too simple the way we're looking at this right now. First of all, if that's the way it were, if it were simply a punk move, it were simply, as you were saying, Stephen A., they shouldn't offer and rescind a tryout because of his potential protest. The fact of the matter is, it would make a ton of sense. I mean, Stephen A. in particular, you've been on the record for this. I mean, life is a risk-reward analysis, you know? And any individual owner of any business would say, let me get this straight. Okay, so on the risk side, you are probably going to protest on my job. On the reward side, the upside is I get what? Maybe a high-end backup quarterback, maybe a low-end starter. Risk reward, yeah, that's not worth it for me. If he was Aaron Rodgers, it would be much more worth it. But he's not Aaron Rodgers. So the risk reward analysis just simply doesn't pan out, especially now, almost 2 years removed from actually playing any high-level football. We can't assume he's gotten better in that time. So that makes it all the more odd that an owner would come to the conclusion, yeah, now's the time for Colin Kaepernick. Add to that, by the way, and again, another thing that, Stephen A., you have agreed with, Colin Kaepernick is not behaving in many ways like somebody who is trying to actually get a job in the NFL. Suing them for collusion, wearing a Kunta Kinte shirt to a deposition. These are not the actions of someone really, really interested in getting the second chance, doing everything he can. So then I say to you this, it's not that simple. What's going on here? It's all about the collusion suit. That's it. All of this is about the collusion suit. One side is offering a job potentially to undercut a collusion suit. The NFL going, somebody's got to give this guy a job. This suit's no good for us. By the way, being in a suit is losing a suit. If you're in a lawsuit, you're losing the lawsuit. So that's one motivation here. On the other side, who won this deal? So far, who's winning? Kaepernick or the NFL? I would say Kaepernick is. If it looks like somebody took a job away because he might protest, that helps his side of the collusion suit. This isn't about football. It's not about Kaepernick's ability on the field. It isn't even really in the end about his protest. It's all about the collusion suit.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go.
I love that point. I love that point.
Hold on, Max. Hold on, Max. I'll give you the floor. But here's the deal. I certainly wouldn't say that, Will, and here's why. Yep. Number one, the fact of the matter is you brought up the Kunta Kinte shirt when he was going to the deposition for Bob McNair. We all know the pigs on the socks, that didn't help him. We all know that the tweet from his girlfriend about Bashotti and Ray Lewis and comparing them to Leonardo DiCaprio and Samuel L. Jackson's characters in the movie Django didn't help matters. We all know that those things hurt him in Baltimore, Miami, and now we have a situation in Seattle. I happen to know, and I've said this on many, many occasions, that Robert Kraft for the New England Patriots as an owner was working behind the scenes on a few occasions talking to people about how this guy needed to be back in the league. And it was before the whole grievance that he was filing against the league came into play. Which brings me back to your point, Will, when you talk about Colin Kaepernick's winning. The reality of the situation is that this may help Colin Kaepernick, but there's a bigger thing to consider here. He may want this. He is clearly aware of the potential sacrifice that he is making. He clearly does not have a problem with it. If being blacklisted from the NFL last year, the entire season, was a wake-up call, then obviously he would have taken a position with the Seattle Seahawks that maybe I'll stand now because my point has been made. He is still not conceded to the fact that he's not a fact, but he has not conceded that he would not kneel. He has not given them that nugget. Therefore, he's clearly comfortable with his position. He recognizes the potential sacrifice that he's making, and he's willing to do it, yes, which a lot of folks would applaud him for. But it doesn't negate the facts that he's being blacklisted, because what they want to do is they want to send him a message that if you're not going to capitulate to these particular stipulations, we're not going to let you back in the league. That is a form of blacklisting.
How dumb, and that's what it's... How dumb would that be to do during the middle of a lawsuit? Just ask yourself that. How dumb would that be of billionaires to do?
Just because it's dumb doesn't mean they didn't do it.
You have a very... Will, you have a very good point. I think it's an interesting and probably correct point. If this is a move on the chessboard, really serving a collusion suit for Colin Kaepernick, and the NFL or Paul Allen or whomever, I guess the NFL, walked right into it. But let's look deeper than that. What is the entire issue really about? And I understand your point. Look, Kaepernick is a bubble starter, maybe a low-end starter, an excellent backup. It's not worth it.
2 years ago.
It's one of the reasons why, for example, when Michael Sam was the first openly gay player in the NFL, I wished he would have been a superstar. Because then it would have, it's unambiguous what's happening. Either he has a job or he doesn't. And the same thing here. If Kaepernick was performing at an even higher level than he was, then this would be less ambiguous. I agree with that. What is it really about, though? It's really about control. The thing that a bunch of entitled billionaires hate more than anything else, I don't even think it's about the business. It's about control. Who is this uppity player who's going to change the way we do business? Because as I've said many times, there's an easy way to address this and keep the national anthem ceremony. Players who don't want it to participate can stay in the tunnel. I mean, if they do that, what are people like me what are we going to say? We're going to say, okay, Kaepernick, this is not your forum for a protest. Well, hold on. If you want to stay in the tunnel, stay in the tunnel. Otherwise, you can participate. They haven't done that. What they've done is essentially put in a de facto and cowardly mandatory participation in the ceremony, because they don't actually have to come out and say it is mandatory and maybe face a lawsuit which tells them wrong.
Max, give us a chance to answer you.
But they can enforce that rule. Well, hold on a second. You guys talk. Let me talk.
Well, yeah, but you're telling us that you're saying stuff to us that we want to respond to you about.
Same.
Max,
it gives them a chance to do what they want to do without getting on the record for it.
Well, let me say this before I go to you. Listen, here's my problem. Right. We're going to the extreme where you want to call them punks. They're white billionaire owners. It's not about a punk move. It's about business. And the fact of the matter, listen, I don't agree with their decision. And I certainly think that Colin Kaepernick is being screwed royally. Let me be very clear about that. But I don't view the owners as punks. I view them as non-minorities who happen to be white, billionaires who feel they had their bottom line compromised. And like any other business, they are reminding you that they're going to run their ship. You won't be allowed to do it. We work at ESPN. It's the worldwide leader, baby. There are rules that we have to capitulate to every day we come into work. Certainly we get to do what we have to do, but at the end of the day, when ESPN brings Heavy Hammer down and they say to us, this is what we need, this is what we got to do if we want to remain gainfully employed with them, that's applicable to any business in corporate America. So if the NFL owners are punks, what we're saying is every executive for every company everywhere are nothing but a bunch of punks, because I don't know anything that they're doing that a business would do if you're compromising their bottom line.
He said it's a punk move.
He said, I want to be very clear. I'm not calling them punks. I said it's a punk move.
I apologize. Punk move.
Okay.
That's what I meant to say.
I want to know, how should the NFL and NFLPA respond?
Okay, if I may, really quickly, and just push back on Max and answer that question. Max, I just want to say this small thing. I also it's not about control. Because, look, Michael Bennett is employed today. numerous, dozens of players who protested are employed today. It's about the bottom line. It's a risk-reward analysis, and it always has been. And so far, Colin Kaepernick has come out on the wrong side of the risk-reward. Yeah, he's the leader, thus making the risk.
I understand.
Yes,
I'm not saying that's not a legitimate. Will, I'm not saying you don't have a legitimate point of view. I understand why you would come to that conclusion. But think in a broader way now. How do you snuff something out? A movement, right?
Who's the instigator?
You take the head off. If Colin Kaepernick is the inspiration, he's the symbol for it. If they can silence him, if they can mute him, if they can erase him, then they've exerted control. Eric Reed came out and said, I'm not going to protest anymore. Think about what it means to erase Colin Kaepernick.
Okay, listen, so if you're the leader of a movement, that means the risk on the bottom line is higher for you, and he's not as good a quarterback as Michael Bennett is a defensive end. So he's not, the reward is not as high. But let's move on, because we've had that conversation for a year. To answer Molly's question, because truly, guys, this is the issue. This is it. If you want to know what's going on here, ask yourself a very odd question. Why is it when Jerry Jones is being drugged into a deposition, or numerous NFL owners are being walked in, literally, there's film. We've got news reports day by day right now of NFL owners going into a deposition. Molly, you probably have names right now of guys who are being deposed today, much less yesterday. Ask me this. Answer me this. Why in the middle of that, the Seattle Seahawks all of a sudden go, you know what's a good idea for our backup plans? Colin Kaepernick. That would make a lot of sense. This is the issue. What's going on here? So it's a chess move, yes, Max. I don't know whose chess move is disingenuous. I'll tell you this, it certainly looks disingenuous that the NFL would all of a sudden come up with a job offer or a tryout in the middle of a collusion suit. I think it's also looking disingenuous that Colin Kaepernick somehow goes to a job offer that these buffoons in the NFL would drag away for the exact reason they're being sued right now. That would be, I mean, John Schneider, Paul Allen, Pete Carroll would be absolute and utter buffoons to go, you know what, it turns out he's going to keep protesting, so let's not do this job offer thing. Oh, by the way, how's the lawsuit about protest
Will, all
going?
he has to say... But Will, hold on. I agree with everything you said right up till there. All Kaepernick has to say is, I'm not committing to that one way or another. He doesn't say, I'm certainly going to still protest. Or he might say, I don't want to participate in that ceremony. There are many different variations of that, permutations of what could happen here. As far as your point goes, that he's not worth the risk, that's why I mentioned, even in the Michael Sam case, it would be nice if Kaepernick was a bona fide, stone-cold superstar quarterback still, and then it would be unambiguous. Either he's given the opportunity or he's not. My suspicion is it's an excuse. The fact that he's not great is an excuse to say the risk is not worth the reward. But we don't know, because you're right. He is not a great quarterback. He's just one of the best 64.
Here's the thing. Here's the issue I think y'all are missing. I don't think it's incumbent upon the NFL to make a move or to make any kind of profound statement. I think the NFLPA has to do it, led by DeMaurice Smith. What has been your involvement in all of this? What has been your influence in all of this? This is a player that the owners are saying is compromising the bottom line. What I think everybody has missed in all of this, and I've said it repeatedly, Colin Kaepernick's protests were never against the NFL. It was against police brutality. It was against racial oppression and other things from a societal perspective. Max Kellerman, your points are very profound. If he had an argument and a beef with the National Football League, but if he didn't have it with them, what is wrong with an owner saying, then why are we suffering because of this? Why should we allow you to make us suffer because of this? Because that's what this comes down to. He didn't target them, but they're the ones suffering. And now we're here talking about the NFL and what they should and shouldn't do when that wasn't they weren't his problem.
I hear what you're saying. That's your conclusion, because of what you just said. Your conclusion is it must be the bottom line. My conclusion is it's actually about controlling the behavior. We have a ceremony. Damn it, you cause us problems, not just financially, but you're showing that you can kind of buck the system.
I agree with that.
I'm just saying, and we run this thing.
I agree with it. I'm just saying,
guys,
what's shocking about that?
We're out of time right now. Let's give Will the final word. We're out of time, and we're going to revisit this later in the show.
Record.
We got a whole nother block to revisit this later. Will, last word here.
I would just say this. In the end, this is a chess game. My conclusion is it's a chess game, and I just don't know whose moves are disingenuous, but I know who's winning right now. And Kaepernick won the latest cycle.
Fair enough. All right, Will, you'll be back with us in just a bit. But coming up, the playoffs will begin tomorrow night without two of the league's best stars in Steph Curry and Kawhi Leonard. Which team will suffer the most from not having their guys? And last night, Des Bryant took aim at the media in a Twitter rant. Does Stephen A. think he's one of the people Des is talking about? Stay tuned.